With a mixture of excitement and fear, I reached out and touched him without saying a word. He turned around, warmly greeted me like he had known me all his life. He wasted no time in inviting me, my cousin Antonita, and her stepbrother Moses, Kiri, and the nanny to his home in Buswa Bulongo, which was about 2 kilometers from where we met. When we arrived, he had us sign our names in a book where he wrote all the names of his children. As we were getting ready to leave, he gave each one of us some money, with me proudly getting slightly more than others. Antonita complained about this, asking why I was getting more than the rest. He replied, by the way, before I continue, I pointed out in a Facebook post that Irene's book has a lot of grammatical errors, and a person was like, nah, the literature is okay, it's just that you mwete mwasoma. But I want to point out something. The Antonia complained about this, asking why I was getting more that the rest is supposed to be than the rest here. Antonia complained about this, asking why I was getting more that the rest. It was supposed to be more than the rest. You see, right here. Yeah, it has some errors, and as a feedback, even before we continue, I don't think Irene wrote this book, but I think she told her side and the person incorporated it into writing. And I'm 100% sure that she hired an editor. Now, if I hire an editor, I do not expect no mistake in something I'm investing money in something that people are gonna buy. Yeah. So this is just a feedback. Like, if I hire you as an editor, you have to fucking proofread what I'm paying you to do. What am I paying you to do? So yes, that is a feedback. Whether you don't want to listen to it or not everybody has low comprehension of the English language and grammar. So Irene, I know you're watching this, or people are gonna share this. Please make sure your work out there is not compromised with poor grammar, because you paid for this. You paid a person to work on this, please. Thank you. Okay. Okay. Antonita complained about this, asking why I was getting more than the rest. And he replied that it was because I was the youngest. Antonita argued that I was older than them all. She was right, of course, but hey, this was my father. And of course, he was going to favor me a little bit with a wink. It was an unforgettable day for me. Okay, growing up with my mother's man, who I was never close to, I had always wondered who my real father was, and my numerous attempts of asking my mother to tell me more about him made me realize that it was a subject she didn't particularly want to be brought up with her. The very first thing we did when we arrived at Jaja's house in Namukozi was to report the big news to everyone. I had finally met my father. I was practically bursting with joy, thinking my mother would be curious to hear the happy news. No, she was not. When Haman heard that I had met my biological father, he too was shocked that I hadn't met him earlier. It turned out that he knew my dad all along. They watched football together at a local field, Kusaza, in Mitiana, and they even supported the same team. My second meeting with my father happened soon after, when the following day I was taken to Mitiana town into a small office inside the market, which was and still is right in the heart of the public taxi park. Later, he took me back to his house, where I met two of his daughters. The eldest of them, Nansuruga, was around 14 or 15 years old. She greeted me with much excitement and peppered me with questions about Mama. And at some point, I wondered if Mama was also her mother. Apparently, she had once lived with Mama and my biological father before I was born. My mother had dumped her at my father's house No, her mother had dumped her at my father's house when she was just 3 months old and never returned ever. I lost touch with Namubiru after this meeting until years later when I was about 15 years old, and I asked my father about her. When he took me to see her, she looked so aged and frail, surrounded by her 5 or so children. That visit turned out to be the last time I saw her. The love and warmth I felt from Namubiru was the closest thing to sibling love and affection, and I have ever experienced in my life. She showered me kindness, and for a moment, I really felt like I belonged. Unfortunately, I have no idea when she passed or where her kids are now. I learned about another older sister and saw her in Afero. She was living in Masaka at the time, but I did not meet her until when I was around 20 years old. There was also a boy who is his heir now. Just when I thought that was it, I later met another boy and a girl born to one mother. A girl from another mother, 2 boys from one other mother. There is an additional boy that I have never met. So when I tallied it up all, we were a whooping 11 or 12 siblings from my dad. He was clearly a very busy man with the ladies. My half-sister who lived in Masaka town once told me that my father said, "Nze omukazi okunzaalamu abaana babiri abanjooze." Obugalo bwa taata Irene Namubiru. Mukawuliddako kabaddiremu. My half-sister who lived in Masaka town once told me that our father said, "Nze omukazi okunzaalamu abaana babiri abanjooze." This explains the absence of the woman I had met when I first visited my dad's house. She was there when I arrived, but by the time I returned for my second visit, she was mysteriously absent. My stay at my father's place was short, just 2 days. On the 3rd day, my sister Namubiru was asked to get me ready and head back to my mother's home in Namukozi. Apparently, my father had sent a letter to my mother asking if he could keep me a little longer at his home. Namubiru nange mumpemu, nange amperezeeko, he requested. That apparently did not sit well with my mother, and she demanded I come back to her immediately. Instead of being taken straight home, we met halfway at the city municipality building, the Gombolola. There I stood between my mother, who was accompanied by her man, and my grandmother on one side, while my father and I were on the other side. There was a mysterious man whose role in the matter I did not quite know. He must have been a mediator. That day marked the longest I ever lived with my father, and it was also the last time I saw him for such a stretch of time, because my mother had reported him to family court that he wanted to take me as his domestic aid. I never quite figured out what to call my father in his absence. Tata or daddy felt foreign to me. And when our paths finally crossed, I was left in a bit of confusion. I settled on calling him Namubiru. It felt safer and more neutral. I had not seen him for 2 years until one day, after landing a job at Viva General Hardware in Indeba, Kampala, as a shop attendant. I thought, hey, maybe it's time to bridge the gap and get to know this man better. So after getting my salary, I got into a taxi and zipped over to Mitiana, where I found him in the market. Just like the first time, I handed him 20,000 Uganda shillings, about $8 bracketed, from my new salary, along with a card addressed as Dear Daddy, wishing him a Merry Christmas. My father lit up with happiness at this gesture. I later found out that he showed his card to everybody he met. When I got back home and told my mother about my little card adventure with my father, her reaction was like a balloon popping. She was furious. Nzera nkwewuunya imbu watwalidde mwami Mubiru sente yali akukoledde ki? She was conveniently forgetting that my father had once covered my secondary school fees at some point while my mother was away in the UK. Even when she finally managed to send money for my tuition, he never stopped sending me money, and he brought other home necessities too in my grandmother's house. Network? Is it my network? Are you guys? Or mumpulira bulungi? Waliwo omuntu agambye network. Mumpulira bulungi? Can you tap? The network is okay. All right. Despite barely knowing my father, I always respected him for his intelligence, pride, and the values he instilled in me. When he was absent, yes, sure. Was he absent? Yes, for sure. But I'm convinced that he did not willingly abandon me. I believe that he was simply denied a chance to be in my life. After my mother walked away from him, I felt like she took me away from him in order to hurt or punish him. Before he died, I took every opportunity I got to see him. Sometimes he picked me up from Machindya and took me to meet my relatives on his side of the family. In fact, two of his brothers that my mother knew very well lived in Lukuli, which was just 10 minutes away from our home in Machindya. My mother was aware of this and had never mentioned this to me. I remember one day when Mama was in the UK and learned through Mama Nora that I was in touch with him. She sent me a clear message in a letter. I never stopped seeing him despite her threats. She harbored such a deep hatred for him that her insults to me convinced me that I was probably an unwanted child or just a painful reminder of a past that she wanted to erase. Each glance she threw my way was like a reminder of him, heavily layered with annoyance and disgust. Right? My father's death is like a subtitle in chapter 2. Hello, I answered the phone one day in 2007 while I was in France. Gwe chitao ali bubi ali kuchitanda agenda kufa sirimu. Bracketed, your father is sick and is about to die of HIV. Came the reply from the person on the other end of the line who, no prize for guessing, that was my mother. Mind you, my father was just diabetic, not HIV positive. I had gotten him tested and he was HIV negative. I was in France when she very nonchalantly dropped that bombshell. That was it. No warm greetings, no small talk, just that cold message. You can't just serve somebody news like that without a proper hello or at least a hint of what the phone call entails. But that's my mother. In the past, I have had to give her a few lessons on phone etiquette. Now, that is also, anyway, maybe that is also another grammatical error. Maybe yes, maybe no, but I would think that, read this line. In the past, I have had to give her a few lessons in phone etiquette and courtesy because she has absolutely none. Now, in the past, I've had to give her a few lessons in phone etiquette. That is also poor grammar. Irene, that is also poor grammar. Please find your editor and make sure they try to correct that. Okay? Yes, there is a problem with the tense, and there is also in a space of in It could have been on phone etiquette or about phone etiquette. You don't say I gave her lessons in phone etiquette. No, that's wrong. No, that's not correct drama. But anywho, maybe yes, maybe no, but I would ask the editor to also look at that. That's not proper grammar, okay? Abakazi abatasoma mwewadde ddembe. Kasimu tetwasoma naye ojja kitegeera. Yes. Okay? We continue. We continue. In the past, I have had to give her a few lessons in phone etiquette and courtesy because she clearly has absolutely none. I mean, gwe isn't exactly a way to kick off any conversation, is it? The funny thing is, she expects, that is, expects is in uppercase. She expects and demands that people greet her politely, yet she is unable to do so for others. At times, she would wake up, walk into the living room, and glare at whoever was there, her face wearing, "Haven't you seen me yet?" to greet me kind of stare. She had never ever been the first to greet anybody or inquire about how your night was. When and if she finally answered to your "wasuzotya no mama," she half-heartedly replied, "Bulungi." Followed by a barely audible ate gwe bulungi bulungi ate gwe. If you were lucky. In June 2013, I got the news of my father's death. In June 2013, I got the news of my father's death. This was just 2 weeks after my return from the temporary imprisonment in Japan, a harrowing story that I will narrate later in chapter 6. When I saw Mr. Kadeyo's number flash on my phone, a sinking feeling settled in my stomach. I just knew even if he had struggled with his health for a long time, for a while, and this was expected, I still did not think it would happen so soon, especially during the annus horribilis that was in 2013. I immediately called Thaddeus, my cousin and then manager, to kickstart the funeral arrangements. Everyone was relying on me to take care of the funeral arrangements, something I had all along anticipated, just like I had taken care of all my father's medical bills and expenses since 2007. Gabriel, my partner at that time, was laying right next to me when that phone call came. He was fresh off his suspension from work and was supposed to restart working that day. We discussed and agreed that he would not be able to be by my side, but he was always in touch with me throughout the arrangements. As the sun rose on this day, I was bombarded with calls from journalists. One of them wanted a photo of my father. I told him I did not have one, but frankly, I just did not want to give it to them. I hadn't even announced his death to anybody yet. When Gabriel caught wind of the calls, he was furious, convinced I was the one leaking family news to the press. But who had? At that time, my mother was living in my house where I lived with Gabriel too. At 9 a.m. that morning, she finally peered into my window to inform me that my father had died. I simply replied, "I know already." And strangely enough, she did not ask for any further details. After a while, she made her way into the house, this time with an urgent concern. Had I announced my father's death to her in-laws yet? You know, the family where she had her other 4 or 5 children. Nga lwaki nze ayina okubakubira? Nga lwaki nze ayina okubabikira? In short, back feeling a surge of frustration. Why can't you be the one to tell them about my father? She burst in a frightful tone mixed with panic and authority, finger pointing at me as if she was about to pounce. For a brief moment, I felt a little bit of fear. Nga lwaki mbagamba ebyange naye byaggwadda era tebinkwatako. She yelled, so why was she asking me to inform them? Still another grammatical error. Still another grammatical error. Still another grammatical error. She yelled. So why was she asking me to inform them? This is wrong. Inform them is a one word. You don't separate it with a hyphen. Thank you. Omukazi atasoma newadde eddembe. The word inform is one word. You don't separate it with a hyphen. Yeah. Okay. She stormed off before returning about an hour later, this time with a much softer tone. By the way, Senga Sarah has been admitted to Zambia Hospital. It will look bad if you do not check on her. It would be nice if you can visit her, she suggested. I stared at her in disbelief and wondered whether I should even respond to her at this point. My head was spinning. I was tethering on the edge of losing my cool. I had never approached my mother with such intensity, but enough was enough. Mama, tata wange yafudde, I blurted out. Ongamba okugenda nkulaba Senga Sarah. Mulinako Luganda ki? Ye, wamunkubidde nti tata wange yafudde olyoke onyigire obutagenda kumulaba? I couldn't believe we were having this absurd conversation amidst mourning. Frustrated, I retreated to my room. She vanished from home for the entire day. Out of nowhere, she reappeared around 4 p.m. and continued to... She read from where she had left off. Ogamba si family yo kati nga we wateka Raymond mu kati nga wateka Raymond mu video yo ogamba mbu si family yo naye nga wateka Raymond mu video yo. She questioned. Raymond is Senga Sarah's nephew. In that moment, all my previous doubts about her reasoning and discerning capabilities solidified. It seemed every time a serious situation arose, my mother excelled at avoiding rational thought or logic. Oh my God. I couldn't believe she was not only leaving me alone to navigate this sad time, but was also demanding impossible from me. Later on, I walked past her in the living room. I couldn't help but remark sarcastically, Kale, abantu bonna ne batambula ne bavaawo mu kaseera nga kano. But it didn't even register with her that I was talking about her. She said later on, obwedda ayombera oli bbaawe eyamuleseewo n'agenda okukola. I thought to myself, wow, with a mother like you, who needs enemies? By 5 p.m., I began putting together what I needed for the video, and the next day, I carried everything into my rusty 4x4 huge vehicle capable of carrying even 7 people. I started the car engine to depart. She came around the garage corner with her hands on her hips and shouted, "Wakati Kati fe tugenda tutya? And I responded, ngenda kati, keeping it simple. She fell silent, perhaps realizing that I was not interested in a fight. Just then, Jonah, the boy that had lived in my compound and had helped with household work, dashed over and shouted, Wamasenga nze kanzije tugende. His use of Wama indicated that he must have overheard an earlier conversation or whatever Mama must have discussed with other people earlier in the day about attending my father's funeral. I didn't even bother to ask father. I waited patiently for about 15 minutes. But my mother showed no intention of coming with us. Eventually, Jonah swung the gate open, hopped into my car, and we drove off, leaving her behind in my house. She did not call, text, or leave so much as a message. I picked up my friend Zam and Ida from Chibuye, and we all set off towards Nakauka Bweyogerere for the vigil. I later learned from my friend Zam that Mama had actually had no intentions of going for my father's funeral in the first place. Nga nchimayochi, she had remarked to Zam. I believe that she thought that I too wouldn't go, seeing that I had spent the entire day at home. Seeing me leave that evening made her lose face, and that it is the only reason she made her effort to attend his funeral in the end. Mama Nicholas, Wilbur, and Richard eventually arrived for the funeral the next day, the day of the burial at 12:50 p.m. Seeing my brother Wilbur brought me warmth and a smile on my face. They all came and sat down near where I was, my mother sporting a sleeveless summer dress that went just below her knees. She also had a do-rag on her head. For a moment, I couldn't help but chuckle at how she looked like a retired MC or rapper about to hit the stage. Wow. She sat with her knees tuckled up towards her chest and did not bother greeting anyone, so no one recognized her as my mother or ex-wife to the deceased. She stayed glued on her spot near my car. I barely said a word to her. Lunch was served at around 1 p.m. and by 2 p.m. the burial had wrapped up. I wandered off, chatting with several people, and eventually made my way to enter my father's remains. It was over in a flash. And guess who showed up? Singer Sarah. The very same singer who had been in the hospital the day before. The one my mother wanted me to visit right after I had received news of my father's death. No one else from her man's side of the family came. Remember, this was the family she had always insisted I should present as my own. I learned that day too that they had lost someone in their family, but they did not send a message nor make a call of condolence. No fuss. I had earlier Ron thought that no one had told them about my father's passing. How about then did Singer Sarah know? Almost immediately after the burial and on our way back home, Thaddeus, who was in my car, casually mentioned a concert deal that my mother had apparently arranged for me. I shot at him a look that said, absolutely not now. I was in no shape to consider concerts. In fact, right after I had come back from Japan, I had told them all that I was not in the right space to sing, but they had insisted that this was the best moment for me to sing because I was the hottest topic in town with all that had happened to me in Japan. They did not give two hoots about my mental health. He pushed on further, telling me that it was a good deal and that if I refused to take the gig, people would think that I was difficult to deal with. I replied, that's probably you, my friend. You are the one having those thoughts, nobody else. When he confessed that it was my mother who had actually said all the people might think you're a difficult person to work with? Crap. My first response was no way, because I was struggling to picture my mother actually saying that, especially since of all people, she should have understood how I was feeling after the Japan saga and my father's death. I asked Tedious to call her right away and put her on loudspeaker. She did not waste time. Munange sagala oyo agende answaze n'agayisage agabi. Yo kimanyi nti yatulese ewaka teyatutute nakulumbe. She continued. The conversation continued in a way I can barely speak about in detail here. In her mind, it was my duty to cater to their transport and other needs. To cater to, probably that's right, okay. To cater to their transport and other needs, okay. Maybe, maybe not. Despite me being a bereaved one, seriously, grown as adults? With an exclamation mark. Let me first block this piece of shit that is commenting people should buy shirts from her. Go and sell them to your father. Okay? In her mind, it was my duty to cater to her transport and other needs, despite me being the bereaved one. Seriously, grown-ass adults. I let her know that I had had each and everything while she was still on the phone, and she hung up. She must have been embarrassed, but out of course, an apology from my mother was never gonna happen to be on the cards. I could not resist asking her later, is this why you came to my funeral dressed like that? I had been mortified at how people were side-eyeing her and whispering because of her choice of clothes for a funeral. Instead of taking accountability, she fired back, well, look at how you were dressed in those tight leggings too, huh? Nawe buli omu owedda nkwewuunya. Classic mama. She's really the queen of projection. To clarify, I was wearing a long, large brown chitenji suitable for a funeral. But given my phobia for creeping crawlies at night, I had worn tights underneath, strictly as a precaution in case I had to venture off into the bushes to do, toilet business. It was clear, Mom, I was in the mood to start shouting too much over this, but that's not my style. I have never, and I would never raise my voice at her despite her many attempts to force me to. She must have immediately called Yvette, her daughter, aka Ever Ready Gossip Buddy, who has a reputation of having a filthy mouth that spews obscenities like a jukebox. Tuliko Yvette kati muganda we. It wasn't long before Yvette called Tedious and unleashed the conversation about how he wants to divide the family because he had let Mama speak on loudspeaker for me to listen to Mama's gossip about me. I wondered what version of events Mama had given her. What made even this more absurd was the fact that Mama did not spend the night with me during my father's vigil. I had to ask Zam and Ida to stay with me. Otherwise, I would have faced this whole emotional roller coaster alone in a family that I did not know that well. Okay? Can we take a breather? Let's breathe in and out. Everybody, please get your what? Let's take a breather, breathe in and out, get your water, your biscuits, your everything, and we continue. Genda ofuke, you know, get your tea, get your cup of tea, get your